Hey everybody, Ben DeBono here for the Sci-Fi Christian, and Here There Be Dragons, on the penultimate episode of the first season of House of the Dragon, as it takes its first of two victory laps around its rival show, Rings of Power. Man, another great episode tonight. The powder keg has blown that we've been talking about all season. And if you were wondering how long it was going to take after Viserys' death for things to start to ramp up, about 30 seconds, literally. So this episode, picks up right afterwards with Viserys' death. And before we get into all the action of the episode, I'm going to give you my episode MVP, and that's probably going to butcher his name, but Raymond Dewaldy, who's the composer. Holy crap. I mean, his scores have been great for years, and all, going, of course, back to, I'm sure he's done other things before this and all that, but going back to the original show, and then he's done the music for Westworld, which say what you want about the convoluted nature of Westworld. Raymond Dewaldy just kills it there with that score, and then tonight with those piano pieces, starting with the episode and then kind of coming back to it throughout, he's just nailing it. Like, incredible composer. If you appreciate um, good musical scores for stuff like this, he's got to be one of the best ones doing it today, and he just proves it week in and week out on this show. So hats off to him. So. Hello, Joseph. So this episode kicks off with the titular Green Council title of the episode. And if you've read Fire and Blood, you knew this was a moment that was going to be coming right away. I just kind of was really looking forward to this because it's great where they have the small council, and then, they lay out what their plans are to crown Aegon. And I love the moment where Otto just says the door remains shut, like the one guy's going to get up and have the body cleared away. No, until we're done, until we know what we're doing, the door remains shut. Otto is such an evil little son of a bitch, and I love him. He's a fantastic character. And, this show, you think about it, and here, yeah, we've still got one episode left, so maybe a bit premature to reminisce about the season as a whole. But it kind of came in with the deck stacked against it, I think. Both in the sense that, last couple seasons of Game of Thrones were not well received, and then the show just disappears. Like, everybody kind of collectively decided we're going to forget that even happened. It's one of the most bizarre things I've witnessed pop culture-wise, where it went from the biggest cultural phenomenon out there to everybody's forgotten it. And then on the other hand, of course, George R. R. Martin's not exactly publishing anything recently, and so the series, even outside of PTSD from season 8, yeah, I think a few people do. I liked it. I didn't love it. I wanted to love it, and I hated parts of it. But if it's the only ending I ever get, I guess I'll take it. George R. R. Martin hasn't published anything, and it's just kind of become a joke at this point. And then, this is based on Fire and Blood, which a lot of us have read, but a lot of people are huge, fans of the main series, either the show or the books, have not read. So you have all of that going on, and the show's got the deck stacked against it, and it's just quietly built this phenomenal first season. And I think one of the ways that it did it, especially coming into this world with a whole new cast of characters, is you had a couple of standouts early on. I think Matt Smith with Damon becomes a fan favorite and everything. But then you have all these other characters who just quietly grown into their roles. Last week, Viserys with Paddy Constantine, and his portrayal was the great example of that. This king's kind of a joke through the whole season. And Paddy Constantine, I think, have done a good job. That's just the way the character was written. It wasn't anything due to his performance. And then he blows it away, both with the character arc and then his performance last week, and just kind of collectively put everybody's jaws on the floor. It's like, holy crap, we're here to do something great. And then, of course, he's gone, but you have these other characters. So Otto has just become this scheming villain through the whole thing. You have Rhaenys, who in this episode is locked up, and then her moment at the end, which I guess I'll just jump around a little bit. We'll go through the whole episode, but to maybe start at the end, um, she and Alicent have that moment earlier on where Alicent's trying to butter her up and basically saying, "Oh, you should have been queen." It's like, yeah, that's of course what you wanted to say, but it's like that moment you see it. Like, we're about to have a big fight between two different sides, and Rhaenys isn't really in the running, but boy, did she feel like a queen in that moment, and not one that you want to mess with. She has a dragon, and she's not afraid to use it. And so she's become this great character. She's kind of been in the background and everything, and I think even up through this episode, she's just sort of been sidelined, and intentionally so from a writing perspective. That's sort of her character. She was almost queen, the queen who never was, and she's sidelined, and then she shows up. It's like she's about to get snuck out the back. And you're thinking, or at least I was thinking, well, wait a second, she's going to want to bring her dragon with her. Boy, does she ever. She shows up as a great character. You have, Kristen Cole, who's kind of been this swarmy little shit through the whole thing. And then the character who really stood out to me as far as this quiet growth in this episode is Alicent. Like, in this cast of people who are really becoming interesting characters, she's really emerged as a phenomenal piece of this whole game. Where she's conflicted. She genuinely wants to do the right thing. She's at times feels like a pawn. At times is a pawn of her father, and then she goes toe to toe with him in this episode. She beats him at his own game, which is great. It's like she's party to what's going on, but she genuinely believes she's doing the right thing, whereas Otto doesn't give two shits whether or not Viserys said anything. He'll take the convenience of it at the end. But Alicent, of course, Viserys doesn't think he's talking to her last episode, but she doesn't know that. She genuinely thinks she's doing what he wants. And the conflict in her and her portrayal, I think Olivia Cooke is the actress. Yeah, I think Olivia Cooke's the actress there, at least the current version of her. Really, really good. It's really, really good all through. So going back to the council at the beginning, love the moment. Two great moments in there. Of course, the objection by, what's his name? It doesn't matter because he quickly gets dispatched by Kristen Cole. And then the other great moment where the King's Guard, Lyman Beesbury. Thank you, Joseph. There's your trivia title. I don't think he's not going to matter for the rest of the show, but he takes his moment. Hey, this is treason. We're not doing this. And quickly gets dispatched, and he kind of has to know it, that's how that's going to go down. He is vastly outnumbered. And then the Lord Commander of the King's Guard basically resigning in that moment. It's like the battle lines are being drawn even in this little room. I really like the whole way the rest of the episode plays out. The search for Aegon is pretty great. And at first, I'll be honest, I wasn't quite on board with it. It felt like padding to me at first, and then I kind of got what they were doing on a couple of different levels. Where this is about he becomes a MacGuffin for the war between Alicent and Otto. Like, okay, we're doing this, but how are we going to do this? Otto wants to kill Rhaenyra and her family, and Alicent doesn't. And this is one of those great character moments because, on the one hand, Otto is just an evil little shit. And as we learn in the council meeting, he's been planning this, and the council's been maneuvering things. And this was the shot he was going to take, regardless of what Viserys did or didn't say in his final moments. Then you have Alicent, who, okay, she wants to do the right thing. She wants to do this the right way, but another great aspect of her character is she's still naive. because Otto's right. It's bad, but he's right. If you're gonna do this, the whole we're gonna give him terms, and this is all gonna uh, be, be, be just fine. It's not gonna work that way. Yeah, Joseph here in the chat says Otto's kind of channeling Robert Baratheon. Yes, but I think Otto is much more politically savvy than Robert was. Robert was a good conqueror. He's a good warlord. He's a terrible king. Otto is the puppet master behind this whole thing. But yeah, taking out the different pieces, like just how Robert knows in the first show that has to, he has to go kill Daenerys to shore up his claim to the throne. Otto knows what has to go down. And Alicent kind of wants to have her cake and eat it too. It's like, yeah, she genuinely thinks that Viserys said this about her son. And so she genuinely thinks she's doing the right thing. But it's the real world. As Otto says, we play an ugly game. And is Alicent really prepared to play that game? I think that's going to be kind of the question we leave her with for this season. Because I honestly don't know if we even see her next week. We probably do. But just like this week, focused all on the greens, I think next week is going to be all, or at least mostly, on the blacks. So we're probably not going to get much Alicent this week. So if this is the end of her arc for the season, I just love where we leave her. Wanting to do the right thing, and boy, is that a recipe for a short life in this world. So so that's one layer that the search for Aegon works on. The other layer is, as you're going through like all the places that he might be, and they first look in the brothels, he's not there, and then they get to this fucked up fight club where these kind of what they were, feral children fighting each other. It's like, okay, we're a few steps removed from just jerking off out the window at this point. This is some messed up stuff. And, who is this guy? Because we haven't really gotten to know him a lot just yet. And now we're sort of seeing him less directly, but more indirectly through the places that he visits, the places people would look for him. And he's not a great guy. Yeah, the twins arguing in that scene was really good. And do we actually want him on the throne? And it turns out, if they don't, well, Aegon would be just fine with that. He's ready to just take off and run in that scene in the Sept, where they do finally locate him. So one piece in all of this is the White Worm, and I've loved the show. There's a few elements I feel like are maybe a little bit underbaked, and that's one of them. So she was Daemon's mistress in the early parts of the show, and now she's apparently a Machiavellian power among the people. And I like the character, I like what they're trying to do, but it does feel a little bit half-baked. Like, it struck me as really odd when she showed up at the end of last week's episode. I don't think I even mentioned it because it was just I wasn't quite sure what to make of it. So I assume she's going to be back for more next season, but there's some missing development pieces there. It feels like we maybe needed just another scene or two of her throughout the season to establish her as this player who's able to kidnap the prince and essentially set her terms for allowing him to be found. So that could have been a little bit better. It's more than a nitpick, but it doesn't derail the whole season by any means. I'd say another nitpick I would have, as long as we're on that topic, is that we've been told last week and this week that Corlys is on his deathbed. I don't think we've seen him unless I'm misremembering anything. And that feels like an odd choice too, considering what a major character he'd been up till that point. Like, would it have been really that tough to have a 30-second scene of him on his wounded bed, hanging on to life? It just feels like the whole rule of show don't tell. This feels like this was broken, and sometimes that can be, you can break that rule to good effect. It doesn't feel like this is one of those. That's more of a nitpick, but those are the main things, I think, outside of the lighting, that I have a problem with in this season. Oh, so all of that's really good. I like Aemond a lot in this episode. He wants to be king. Did you catch his glance in that final scene before the dragon shows up, as the crown's being put on Aegon, and he is eyeballing that thing. He wants it for himself. I can't wait to see how Aemon develops, because he seems like last week he seemed like just this evil little guy. I compared him to Alex Delars from Clockwork Orange, and I think that element's still there. Here he feels a bit more conniving, a little bit more Machiavellian, uh, definitely wiser and more learned than his brother. Probably better suited to be a king, but if he really does have that Clockwork Orange gene, then that's probably good that he's not going to be. But the Targaryen sons are sort of evil, I think. This is not good. I mean, Viserys, as far as Targaryen goes, is about as good as they come, and his sons are not. They seem like they are bad news. A couple other things in this. Really like the Lord intimidation scene. You guys are gonna bend the knee, and if you don't, you're gonna be escorted out. And then we have the one guy who tries to make a run for it and is summarily brought back. I'm not sure, was he the one who was hanged? We had the one guy hanging in that scene. I couldn't tell who it was when they're smuggling Rhaenys out. It was probably him, but I guess I don't know that for sure. What else? Yeah, it does seem weird that he was just sort of hanging in the courtyard if it was him, but whatever. Um, yeah, so like Aemon, I wasn't quite sure why Kristen Cole was crowning the king. That seemed like an odd choice, unless there's some bit of Game of Thrones, Song of Ice and Fire, esoteria, where the Lord Commander of the King's Guard is the one who does the crowning. I don't think that's true. So, assuming that's not true, that seemed like a bit of an odd choice, but Kristen Cole, everybody. Like Larry's kind of going around and playing both sides. Kristen Cole is known as the Kingmaker in Fire and Blood. See, damn it, I just reread Fire and Blood this summer, but and I've really liked it. But the thing about it is, it's a history, and so you do get, at least I get lost in all of the names. I am interested after this season to go back and at least read just the sections around this, because now that we're invested in these characters, it feels like it'll be easier to follow. Not that it's hard to follow, but you get lost in the names, and especially in this section of the history where there's so many different sides. It's like even watching the show, I imagine you're getting lost and people are getting confused about who's who and who's on what side. And so in a super condensed history, I at least, and it's probably a me problem, found it hard to follow. So good to know that that's from the book. Larry's switching sides, or at least not switching them, but playing all sides against each other with Alicent, Otto, all of that. He's a great character. I can't wait to see how he develops. And then we have the end, which I've already talked about a little bit, but just a couple of other things with it. I really liked. I like that she shows up. I like that she has them at sword point or dragon point, to be more literal, and then she lets them go. It's like she's making a statement, but she's not willing to pull that trigger. And I think that's valid. Like, on the one hand, you could say, why? She could have ended the war right there. Yeah, but you do it that way, and you're just causing more problems. All of a sudden, you're going to be accused of regicide, whether or not Aegon is a legitimate king or not. You've kind of tarnish her legacy. That's not who she is. But I like that she shows up as somebody like, you can lock me in my room, you can push me around, you can deny me the crown, but at the end of the day, look what I can do. Look at my dragon. Don't try and play me. I will play you. So she's a major power to be reckoned with. Man, what a show. Just phenomenal, phenomenal work. For anybody who season 8 just left a terrible taste in your mouth, I hope people are back on board with it, because if people aren't watching this because of the way Game of Thrones ended, they're really missing out. This show has just built itself week after week after week and is earning the moments that we're getting now. Like, there's not a single thing that's happening that doesn't feel earned and built up to. And I can't wait to see where we're going. Excited for next week. Excited for the next season. I've heard 4 seasons, 5 seasons, which I also kind of like, because I think, Game of Thrones, it sort of got away from them. And, like, what happened? How did season 7 and 8 go bad? Well, I think one way they went bad is that Benioff and Weiss were burned out. You know, and it's sort of, it's like, oh, cry me a river. You've got the most popular show in the world. Just deal with it and come to a good conclusion. And yeah, I think that's a fair critique. But they got burned out on it, and it spiraled away from them. And I like that this is going to be more contained. If they can do it in 4 seasons, 5 seasons, feels like the right length to it. And then there's so many other stories, including in Fire and Blood, that I would love to see either as a mini-series. I'd love to see a mini-series of The Conquering. I know we're getting the Jon Snow miniseries, and well, maybe, I don't feel a need for it, but maybe, we'll see. I'm open-minded to it, but I hope that there's more, and I like them delving into the history. There's good stuff. All right, guys, that's all for this week. If you want to know what I'm smoking, this is an Unstolen Valor from Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust, one of my favorite cigars, highly recommended if you enjoy that sort of thing. Otherwise, I'll be back next week for the season finale, and I just might have a special guest with me. We'll see you then.